While most of us fear a bee sting, bees are insects we cannot live without. These airborne creatures are responsible for pollinating 1/3 of our food supply, and many call the honey they produce a superfood. Beekeeper Greg Bokan from the Bokan Bee Ranch joins us with some important information we should all be aware of when it comes to bees. Welcome to the program, Greg.
Thank you.
First off, how did you become a beekeeper? How did you get into this line of work?
It's kind of by accident. My wife and I, we stopped at a local beekeeper's place to buy some honey, and he took us for a little tour of his apiary. And on the way home, my wife had mentioned to me that she thought maybe there'd be something I'd be interested in. And next thing you know, I was a beekeeper. So,
what did you do before that?
Oh, I do a lot of different things. I do wedding photography and other things like that. But we had a big garden, so with the garden, the beekeeping kind of fit our garden.
Was a nice fit.
Yep.
What's a typical day like on the job for you as a beekeeper?
It's can be hot sometimes and heavy lifting. The boxes are quite heavy. They can be 100 pounds full of honey sometimes, and usually some of the hottest days seems like the days you're out working on them and wearing all the gloves and jacket and all that can be.
So you're in the full suit like we usually see on TV.
Pretty much, yeah.
To protect yourself. Now, I've heard a lot in the news about the bee population being reduced or diminished. Is that correct, and why should we be concerned with that?
That's definitely correct. In 1947, there were approximately 5 million hives in the United States, and as of last year, they're down to about 2.5 million. So they're quite a bit lower. A lot of the diseases that are from it's called the Varroa destructor mite. They've been taking out a lot of hives, and there's quite a few reasons the hives have been struggling, but
does that have to do with any industrial farming or pesticides?
That's part of it. The monoculture farming that we typically do here, it's tough on bees. The way monocultures work is there's nothing for the bees to eat after the pollination is done. So, for example, like the almond crop, after the almonds are in bloom for only 3 weeks, and they truck all the bees out there to pollinate it, and when they're done pollinating the almonds, there's nothing left, so the bees have to be removed and taken somewhere else. So,
what if we see a beehive in our backyard? If there's a shortage of bees, should we remove that? Should we call someone to remove it for us?
Call somebody. You can call me to remove it. That would be a.
Are we hurting the population when we remove those?
Well, you take them. I'll take them to my apiary and rescue them, basically.
Now, how much work does it take to make, say, a pound of honey or a cup of honey?
A pound of honey takes about 2 million flowers to make. The bees have to visit. They fly about 50,000 miles to, or I'm sorry, what would be?
50 million or 50,000 or
yeah, 50,000 miles.
There.
50,000 miles. It would be. It's equivalent of 2 times around the Earth to make 1 pound of honey.
So when you hear working as hard as a bee or a busy bee,
they work very hard.
They're probably some of the hardest working insects that we have around.
They're probably one of the hardest working animals on the planet.
Now, are there any health benefits from eating honey?
There's lots of health benefits from it. It's really good liver fuel. So for a good restful night's sleep, there's a chemical in there. It's called glycogen, and what that does is it helps to fuel the liver for a good good restful night's sleep. It releases melatonin, which also is very good for sleep. So you can use it for a lot of different things. It's good for a digestive aid. Also good for even burns or cuts. It's antimicrobial, antibiotic effects that it has. Has a very good quality for that. So.
I was doing a little bit of research online prior to this interview, and I was reading some studies where they were comparing cough syrup to honey, and honey actually had a better result.
Yeah, I've heard that for sure. So.
Now, you sell honey yourself at your farm?
I do.
Is it a raw honey? Is it the same thing we get at Mark's when we go to the grocery store?
It's definitely not the same thing as you get from Mark's. That honey is typically imported. It's typically legally imported. It's pasteurized. It kills all the beneficial enzymes, and all the pollen that's in it has been killed in the pasteurization process. So it's definitely not raw honey you get from a beekeeper.
So it's just like more of a sugary syrup at that point?
Chances are it's been mixed with high fructose corn syrup or rice syrup. When they do the pasteurization process and they filter it, it very much thins out the consistency of the honey. So they add the corn syrup and rice syrup to thicken it up.
Will it say that on the bottle?
It does not.
It doesn't say that on the
It does
bottle.
not.
Wow, that's quite interesting. So, what have you learned from working with bees? Have you learned anything about yourself?
I learned a lot about myself working with bees. I learned that, just how important they are, and it's such a rewarding thing to do, just to know that you're doing good. You're helping them to do good and helping them to thrive. But they're so important. Like you said, they're responsible for 1/3 of the food that we eat, and that's big. If bees go away, which they very well could, if they do, we'd be in a lot of trouble.
Is our government doing anything to promote the production of bees?
I say a little bit, not as much as they could be, I would think.
What can we do as consumers?
Support your local beekeeper. That's the best thing. And plant flowers. Plant pollinator-friendly gardens. That's a great thing. A lot of the problems they have is lack of resources. They're not able to get to the forage they need to get to. Reduce your use of pesticides and herbicides. A lot of the herbicides are killing the local native species that the bees like to feed on.
Does that affect the taste of the honey? If they are, if you put some sort of chemicals maybe on your flowers and you were a beekeeper
it's going to
yourself?
kill the bees, is what it's going to do more than affect it. They use the wax in the comb. It's kind of like the liver, and it acts like a filter basically. So it doesn't typically get in the honey, but it does. You have to do a comb rotation where you rotate the combs out of the hive to reduce the amount of buildup of toxins in the hives.
One thing I do want to point out, and we have discussed this before, that if you have a compromised immune system, you probably shouldn't be taking in raw honey, or if
Right.
you're a child under the age of 1, because you can't fight off something that's not pasteurized. But
Yeah,
for
it's
someone
infantile
who's,
botulism is what it is.
and if somebody is a healthy individual and is looking to,
Boost the immune system. Right.
that might be a good way to go. And how can people
Absolutely.
reach you if they'd like to stop by and sample some of your honey and find out more
Right.
about what you do?
They could check us out on Facebook. We're the Buzz Honeybee Collective, and that would be a great way to reach out to us.
And where are you located?
We're in Richfield, Ohio.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Greg. We really appreciated having you here on the
Glad to
show
be here.
and sharing this important information with us.